Hello children, let us continue with audio file 3. Yesterday in Deep Water 2, we saw how Douglas' second attempt to resurface fails and how he is saved at the nick of time. We also see the immediate impact of this incident and also the long-term consequences. In audio file 3, we will complete Deep Water, that is paragraph 21 to 28. I used every way I knew to overcome this fear, but it held me firmly in its grip. Now that he was deprived of the joys of canoeing, boating and swimming, he tried every method he knew to get himself freed from this fear. But he failed. Finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor and learn to swim. He tried on his own, he failed. Then he decided that he cannot overcome his fear without external help. And so he decided to hire an instructor and learn to swim. I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. This is an important question. How did the writer overcome his fear of water? So, you learn the answer by marking it as points. The first point is, I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. Please mark that as point 1. The instructor put a belt around me. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley that ran on an overhead cable. He held on to the end of the rope and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. Please mark that as point number 2. So first he went to the pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. And after that, the instructor put a belt around him. A rope was attached to the belt and it went through a pulley and ran on an overhead cable. He held on to, here is the instructor, he held on to the end of the rope and Douglas kept swimming back and forth in the pool. He practiced hour after hour, day after day and week after week. On each trip across the pool, a bit of the panic seized me. So whenever he got into the water and reached the middle, a panic would seize him. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope and I went under, some of the old terror returned and my legs froze. So when he was practicing in the pool, at times he felt afraid and his body became paralyzed. It was 3 months before the tension began to relax. So it took him 3 months to relax his body. Then, this is point number 3. Then he taught me to put my face under water and exhale and to raise my nose and inhale. So slowly he learned the nuances of swimming. I repeated the exercise hundreds of times. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went under water. So unlike any other swimmer, William Douglas needed more time to practice each step. The fourth point is, next, he held me at the side of the pool and had me kick with my legs. So his legs were always rigid when he went into the water. So he was asked to remain at the side of the pool and he kept kicking the water with his legs. For weeks, I did just that. Even to do that, he needed several weeks. At first, my legs refused to work, but they gradually relaxed and finally I could command them. So he needed several weeks to relax his legs in water. And then finally, his mind was able to control his legs. Thus, piece by piece, he built a swimmer. The instructor had to build a swimmer out of William Douglas piece by piece. That means he had to give him practice for each of these exercises. And when he had perfected each piece, he put them together into an integrated whole. In April, he said, "Now you can swim. Dive off and swim the length of the pool crawl, stroke. So it took several months for him to give practice for William Douglas, and by April, the instructor was confident that he had built a swimmer out of William Douglas. So what he told, now you can swim. Dive off and swim the length of the pool, crawl, stroke. I did. The instructor was finished. So he successfully completed swimming the pool to and fro. But I was not finished. The role of the instructor was over. He had built a swimmer out of William Douglas. But still, William Douglas was not satisfied. He knew there were traces of fear still inside him. I still wondered if I would be terror-stricken when I was alone in the pool. So now, without the instructor, he decided to go swimming. He went to the pool. He tried it. I swam the length up and down. Tiny vestiges of the old terror would return. So he tried to swim when there was nobody, because the incident had happened when there was nobody at the pool, and that fear always remained in him. So he tried to swim when he was alone at the pool. I swam the length up and down. He successfully completed swimming the length up and down the pool. Tiny vestiges means signs, of the old terror, of the fear would return. But now I could frown and say to that terror, trying to scare me. So when he tried swimming alone, that fear would return, but he was able to challenge the fear. Trying to scare me, well, here's to you. Look, and off I'd go for another length of the pool. So challenging fear, he kept swimming. Paragraph 24. This went on until July. So by April, the instructor had completed training him, and he continued swimming in the pool till July. But I was still not satisfied. I was not sure that all the terror had left. He still felt that there were traces of fear inside him. So, in the pool, he was a successful swimmer, but he wondered whether he would be able to swim in the other water bodies. So, I went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock at Triggs Island, and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stamp Act Island. So he goes to Lake Wentworth and swims across to the other shore, which had a length of 2 miles. I swam the crawl, breaststroke, side stroke, and backstroke. He tried everything. Only once did the terror return. So when he was swimming in Lake Wentworth, once the terror returned. When I was in the middle of the lake, I put my face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. So he just decided to test himself and see if he still had fear within him. So when he was in the middle of the lake, he puts his head under water. And then again, the fear returned. The old sensation returned in miniature. Miniature means in a tiny form, his fear returned. I laughed and said, but by now he had learned to challenge fear. He just laughed it off and said, he personifies fear here. He calls fear Mr. Terror. Well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me? It fled and I swam on. So by now, he had learned to challenge his own fear. Paragraph 26. Yet, I had residual doubts. At my first opportunity, I hurried west. Residual means still leftover. So he had leftover doubts. He was not very confident about his own, whether he had overcome his fear. At his first opportunity, when he could find time, he hurried west, went up the Titan to Conrad Meadows, up the Conrad Creek Trail to Maid Glacier, and camped in the high meadow by the side of Warm Lake. So he had successfully completed swimming in Lake Wentworth. Next, he decides to swim in a greater water body, that is Warm Lake. The next morning, I stripped, dived into the lake and swam across to the other shore and back, just as Doug Corcoran used to do. So he jumps into Warm Lake and decides to do swimming there, just as another swimmer, Doug Corcoran, had done. He successfully completed it, and he was elated. I shouted with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned the echo. I had conquered my fear of water. By now, he himself was confident that he had overcome his fear. Paragraph 27, very important paragraph. The experience had a deep meaning for me, as only those who have known stark terror and conquered it can appreciate. So this whole experience had a lot of significance in the life of William Douglas, and he feels that it can be appreciated how he overcame his fear of water, how he had experienced death in a dying state, and then how he had overcome his fear of water can be appreciated only by people who have themselves experienced fear and have overcome it. According to him, in death there is peace. So death is only a peaceful state. There is no need to fear death, according to William Douglas. There is terror only in the fear of death. So, according to William Douglas, who had a near-dying experience, feels that to die is to be in a peaceful state. So there is fear only in the fear of death. When you fear death, you will experience fear. Otherwise, death, there is nothing to fear death. As Roosevelt knew when he said, Roosevelt here is Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of US. What he said is, all we have to fear is fear itself. So what we are fearing is fear. There is no need to fear death. Why? Death is supposed to be a peaceful experience. Because I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce, the will to live somehow grew in intensity. William Douglas feels that he had experienced the sensation of dying and then the terror that fear of it can produce, and he had suffered that fear for several years. So the will, the eagerness to live grew in him. At last paragraph 28, at last I felt released, free to walk the trails and climb the peaks and to brush aside fear. Now he was free to take any path that life placed before him, any challenges that life placed before him, because he had overcome his greatest fear. So that brings us to the end of chapter Deep Water. Please complete the exercise in Deep Water 3 and also the extract based questions. You will have a test paper in the reopening week itself. Thank you, children.